Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. We are just plowing through the playoff season. We are through wild card weekend. A few housekeeping notes before we get started here. I will have my free divisional round playoff notes. That'll be well over 20 pages. If you want info on how to get those will be pinned to my X profile at Jim Coventry NFL later on Tuesday, probably Tuesday late afternoon. Look for that there. You can get the notes on the game and take what you will from them. Also, this show, the RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Show, will run Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays through the Super Bowl. During the offseason, we'll still do 2 days a week. I'm thinking Mondays and Wednesdays. More on that later. Also, this is a big one. The Monday and Tuesday before the Super Bowl, you won't want to miss the RotoWire 2-part marathon. We have 58 analysts for Super Bowl 58. More info coming on that soon. Today, like last Tuesday, we have Doug Orth of FF Today with us. Now you can follow Doug at Doug Orth, DOUGORTH. Definitely want to follow Doug's work. Doug is a true grinder. He understands the game inside and out. Been doing great content for close to 2 decades, right? We're getting close to that, right? We're right about that point. So just like I said, Doug, seasoned veteran, knows his things. Doug, tell everybody how you're doing, and I want you to also tell us a takeaway from Wild Card Weekend, where 5 home teams won, a couple upsets, Texans over the Browns, and of course the Packers over the Cowboys. Go ahead, tell us how you're doing, and tell us about a little reaction to the Wild Card Weekend.
Well, Jim, thank you for the great introduction, first of all, and secondly, missing out on sleep, but that's why we grind till the end, baby. We grind till the end. General takeaways. Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about this pre-show, but just so many of us look forward to Wild Card Weekend, to the playoffs, and then to have what we discussed, one and a half good games, if that. Yeah. General lack of competition, and it was highlighted by I'm not going to say the entire Eagles team didn't show. I'm going to say the defensive backfield didn't show up. The secondary and the linebackers did not seem to care more than half the time. So that was in general my biggest takeaway. There was certainly some good offense, but there was a lot of bad defense.
Oh my gosh, and there's the tackling. I don't want to get there, but let's stop there with the generic takeaway. We're going to start the show. We'll recap those 2 Monday games. Got to talk about them. And then the goal of this show is to preview the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. All right, Bills 31, Steelers 17. Look, this was never a game. Bills scored immediately. George Pickens fumbled. The Bills came right down and cashed in 14-0. It seemed for a nanosecond like, is there a world where the Steelers could catch up? Realistically, the Bills were able to run successfully enough. They ran 34 times to 30 passes. James Cook and Josh Allen take care of business. We'll get to the Steelers side later. Stephon Diggs continues to see high target volume, but he just cannot put the yardage up. He rarely is hitting 60 yards. He doesn't have a 90-yard game since week 9. We will preview the game later that they're going to play against the Chiefs. But based on this, what were your thoughts on the Bills' side of the ball in this contest?
Well, my takeaway from the game is basically the same I've had from the last 2 months, basically under Joe Brady. And I'm going to call it extreme balance. And it's almost forced balance, if you want to call it that. Diggs, I don't see where not that Diggs was making this living by working down the field on vertical routes. I mean, I'm not sure that's been his game probably since his first 2 years in the league. And he was a good route runner back early in his career.
He was,
too. But yeah, I'm not seeing downfield shots at all with him. It's a lot of quick screens, a lot of hitches, a lot of short stuff, and he's 29 going on 30, I think. I know I'm pretty sure he's 29. Maybe that has something to do with his yards after catch, but he's just getting a lot of short stuff, and it's hard to get those 8 catches, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns when you're not going down the field.
Now, it was fortunate for the Bills that there was no TJ Watt. Certainly, that minimizes much of the Steelers' defense. You put more attention on players like Highsmith and others, whereas usually you got to put extra bodies on Watt. So that certainly helped. So definitely that. I also thought, and I hope Gabe Davis is fine, and I hope he can play, and I want him to be healthy. But I think from a game planning standpoint, it might have been better the Bills didn't have him here because he's their downfield guy. And by not having him, I was saying in the pregame analysis of this that the Bills won't likely take as many deep shots. Oh, sure, you can throw to the tight end down the middle, that's something, but that's fine. But other than that, I think that was something that could have helped limit Josh Allen's mistakes because he will take those shots, and you never know how he's going to end up. Any legs to that?
I don't think I have anything to add to that. Just I like what we're seeing from Khalil Shakir. I still don't think he's getting the volume, especially if we're going to throw Diggs the short stuff all the time. Then let's throw Shakir the short stuff as well. But I think they're overloading James Cook, and we can talk about this later. But I don't think he's a 20 touch per game guy like he's been the last month and a half. But I'll stick by what I said before about forced balance. I don't know that I would force the balance, but maybe that's going to come into play this coming week, where for the idea of balance, run pass balance, and that kind of thing. I think that'll come into play and be effective this week. So
before we get to the Pittsburgh side, when Shakir scored that touchdown, that great move, I thought Shakira, and then I put up a little thing on Twitter or X of hips don't lie. Khalil Shakir. I put a little picture, a gif of Shakira. I thought that was perfect, man. I'm sure a million people thought of it before, but to me, I was easily amused, so I like doing that. Let's get to the Steelers side of the ball, Doug. All right, look, Rudolph's numbers were fine.
Yeah.
Basically, Buffalo was losing more bodies. They went in this game without Rasul Douglas. They lost their linebacker, Terrell Bernard. Somebody else went out. It was a horrible attrition of injury on that side, and he was getting a lot of underneath stuff, so fine. And they were fine giving it to him, especially when they had a lead. Just, fine, take it, whatever. But Mason Rudolph, he was never going to give him a chance to win. He was a third-string quarterback with multiple games of film as a starter on him. He has that propensity to stare down receivers. He's a third-string quarterback for a reason, and like I said, even with the injuries that Buffalo had, he was unable to do it. And Buffalo wisely focused on slowing the rushing attack, and they mostly slowed down Najee Harris by doing that. Say, Mason Rudolph, if you could beat us, God bless you, and it wasn't in the cards. How'd you perceive the Steelers side in this game?
Well, again, I think you nailed it pretty good. Pittsburgh was going to be one of those teams. We talked about this last week. A lot of teams have to have games play out a certain way, and Pittsburgh was definitely going to need to have things play out a certain way where the absence of T.J. Watt was going to be minimized, which is a big ask. But the running game was going to have to carry the load. Rudolph was going to have to get hot, and for a short time, I guess you could say he got hot, but I'm not sure so much of it was he got hot or the Bills were giving him things underneath. I remember the commentator saying something about, I think Rudolph's getting hot.
But, as hot as you could get on a sub-zero day or a 10-degree day, right?
That's right. But, yeah, they're going to need things to play out a certain way. Deontay Johnson's got to have a big game. Pickens was got to break loose for a big play. The running game was got to carry the day, and those things just didn't happen because the Buffalo's got a good defense, even with the linebacker injuries. And before I turn it back to you, Balin Spector, the other linebacker, so it was Terrell Bernard and Balin Spector both got hurt, so they got AJ Klein. Yeah.
Oh, and that's rough, and we'll talk about in the game preview. If these injuries are significant, this could be a problem. So that's going to be something we'll talk about. But post-mortem on the Steelers. Obviously, they get another winning season to the dismay of many. Probably didn't want to see them in the playoffs. Probably want to see a team with a better chance to be competitive. But with the way the weekend went, they were just one of a number of teams that rolled over. So nothing really there. But for fantasy for next year, and this is the one I want to start with. The Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren thing. And I keep the fantasy world is, oh my gosh, Jaylen Warren, he's the better runner. He's whatever. Tony Pollard was the better runner than Zeke Elliott last year, but you put that guy in a lead role. I talk about this all the time, Doug. When you're the lead guy, the defense plays at your speed. When the change of pace guy comes in, the defense, you can't just say, play fast, Warren's on the field, or Tony Pollard's on the field. It doesn't work that way. Muscle memory does not work that way. We've seen it for decades. The change of pace guy always looks better than he really is. And then when he gets a real job as a starter, it's like, oh my gosh, he's not that. He can't get me to 1,500 yards. Well, yeah, that's the way it works. Najee Harris, in my mind, is a very, very good NFL running back. He's not a superstar, but very, very good. Jaylen Warren is in a perfect situation as the changeup. But look, some of these teams get it wrong. Dallas got it wrong. They didn't bring in anybody for Tony Pollard. They just handed him the keys to the car. After last year, when he checked out of that game against the Bears and he told the offensive coordinator, quarterback's coach, Stump Mitchell, I'm done. And he was like, done. And Stump Mitchell realized he's like a race car. You can only use him a certain way, but Dallas didn't handle it that way. Anyway, that said, Warren is probably going to be drafted right, maybe ahead of Najee Harris. Maybe. So how do you see this? How do you see the backfield? I mean, we know that Warren will get drafted higher. That's the fantasy community. It's the way it's going to be. How do you see it?
I think Harris spoke to this during the course of the season, and I think it showed it was part of the revitalization, if you will, of the Steelers offense. I mean, look, the offense was never great to begin with, but they did get better as the season progressed. Some of that you can attribute to the fact that they changed offense coordinators. Fine. But Harris spoke to the fact that he realized that he's an inside runner. And once he kind of wrapped his mind around that, then I think you saw better stat line from him, obviously, but you saw just better running from him. And I don't want to make it so simple as Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside, but that's I think the Steelers have it. The Steelers have it right now. Where okay, let's go about 2/3, 1/3 on the carries, and then let's have Warren handle most of the passing game work. As far as fantasy, I'm not. We have these situations every year, different teams, but and the passing guy, the explosive guy, is the one that catches the headline or that catches the eyes, and then we read about those guys on the X and the Twitter, and they say you can't pass on this guy, explosive run rate, this, and so on and so forth that, and football is people don't. The layman football viewers don't want to admit that there's still some value, not as much value as there was 20 years ago. There's still some value in tough running in between the tackles. So, again, I think I'm taking Harris a little bit higher than Warren, but maybe a round or two difference. I don't know that there needs to be a huge difference between the two, but I'm still going to go volume because what do you say, Jim, all the time? Volume
is king in fantasy football. Yes. The one thing the Steelers did that fixed Najee Harris, and they actually did this at the end of, oh my God, Matt Canada's reign of terror, is they started these more of an under center run game. They had been using running out of shotgun, and Harris was really struggling in that. But they had fixed that before he left, and it was starting, and they continued that. And that really was the key to unlocking that entire rushing game, because that whole offense was stagnated. All right, quickly on the last bit of this, we don't know who the quarterback will be. Kenny Pickett got benched for a third-string quarterback. We don't know if they're going to have access to bringing in a quarterback or trading or figuring something out. We have no idea what that's going to be. So right now, it's very hard to predict the wide receivers. George Pickens is what I see as a potential star player. But if he doesn't have a competent quarterback, I don't know enough can get done. Deontay Johnson obviously is the possession guy. He finally started scoring touchdowns after not being allergic to the end zone. Really, in the last 6-7 weeks, he couldn't do anything but find the end zone. So is there any reason to talk about these guys until we know their quarterback situation?
Jim, I don't think so. I mean, they're great talents. Both of them are great talents.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you saw with Pickens this year, he has the potential. I think against the Bengals, he had a 35-point game, PPR obviously. And then I think he followed up with a 20-point game, and then we haven't heard about him ever since then or before then. And I think that's what you're going to get this spike. He's going to be a spike week guy until we get better quarterback play. Deontay Johnson, probably a wide receiver 3. Unfortunately, he has wide receiver 1 upside. We've seen it already, but that I think we need to be looking at those guys in maybe the 6-7 round area, somewhere in there. And I'm not sure I'm counting on either one as a starter, to be honest with you.
It's tough to do. Well, last thing before we get to the next game is I want to point out, you mentioned earlier, you were talking about the people in fantasy with the explosive run rate and all this. If you're a serious fantasy player Awesome. Get a numbers guy. Get a numbers guy or a numbers gal. Yes. Get a numbers person. Have those people. Numbers guy, numbers gal, whatever. Get them because they're valuable. But also counter that with the people who understand football, because make your picture well-rounded. If you just take numbers, this is a game played by human beings. This is a game with offensive systems, changing pieces. Make it a smorgasbord of insight you're getting from others, but get it from different types. Like I said, I'm never throwing shade on the numbers guys and gals. It's there. It's fine. I know the numbers, and it influences some of my decision-making, but ultimately I have to understand who the player is, how they fit into a potential scheme, how they fit into a team concept, all these things. Any comments on that, Doug, before we get to the next game?
Everything helps. Both are great pieces to the picture, or pieces to the puzzle. But what I would say, and I encourage this to people who I feel like are being led astray by other people. And just when you get advice from, it can be us, it can be any number of other people. Run it through your BS detector, right? And if there's a hint of, this, I don't think this guy watches games. If that crosses your mind, there's hundreds of the rest of us out here who do watch games, okay? And so, but the numbers are, hey, we play a game based on numbers. Of course, a numbers analyst, and we're numbers guys too, but we're just not reliant on numbers, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So they're all pieces to the puzzle, and the more pieces to the puzzle that you can, the more pieces to the puzzle that you have, the more complete your understanding, and the more complete the picture is. So.
Exactly. Now, let's get to the next game. And I don't think we're going to spend much recapping, so there probably isn't a whole lot, but we will do this for the sake of what we do. Buccaneers crush the Eagles 32-9. Baker Mayfield, 337-3. Yes, Trey Palmer, David Moore, running like they were on a playground as a high school kid with grade school kids, running around. Oh, here I am. I'm going to score a touchdown. Stop me. Cade Otton ripping them up for 89 yards. We know the spine of that defense was weak all season. The two receivers that didn't do great. Fortunately, Chris Godwin scored a touchdown. Mike Evans only 48 yards. We'll get to him in a minute. But realistically, I guess we'll get to the Eagles when we get to the Eagles. It was a great scoring game by the Buccaneers. My takeaway from the game is zero. I learned nothing in this game because I don't think they faced a competitive defense. Thoughts?
No, I was stunned. I mean, I've watched enough of the Eagles games. I've watched most of the Eagles games since they're in their demise or the second half of the season. And if they could have cared less last night, I'm not sure. That back seven, I think I heard Joe and Troy. I'm not sure which one, the commentators, obviously. And one of the tenets of man coverage is being able to have enough vision so you guys don't run into each other. I'm talking about the David Moore touchdown. Okay, you expect that versus man coverage. You expect to have crossers. You can't have guys run into each other, and that was key to that. That was key to that play there. Just the half-hearted tackle attempts.
Oh.
They might as well have been those. The effort that we saw there was one I was expecting in Kansas City. I can understand it there. I don't understand it in Tampa. So you're basically revolting against your coaching staff when you're playing that indifferent.
Not much to add to that. Not much to add to the Buccaneers, and we'll preview their game coming up, so we don't need to say much more here. But again, I really had very little takeaway. Kudos to the Bucs. They won. Mm-hmm. They won big. They advanced. That's beautiful. But we'll talk about them in a bit. Eagles, it was a mercy killing. Just get the season over. Send us packing. We're done. Goddard goes down on the field. There were other players too that were just kind of dropping right and left. Devontae Smith got his yards after they decided. I really was stunned. The Eagles didn't come into this game with the mindset run. We got our offensive line. We got DeAndre Swift. Let's just run the ball. See if we can contain the game. And a side note. Brian Johnson's name is coming up for head coaching positions.
Yeah.
What am I missing here? He was the worst. He had all this talent. And even when they were scoring 28 points a game, the offense was disjointed every week. And now it was not just disjointed, but they had injuries and they missed A.J. Brown. But as those weeks going, they were horrible. What do you take away from the Eagles?
Well, I'm going to attribute that last thing you said to the Shane Steichen effect. Okay, so we saw what he did with the Colts. We saw what he did with the Eagles last year. We saw what he did with a good but not great Colts offensive roster this year. And then, Nick Sirianni, he's done well in Philadelphia. That must be the next logical step. We'll take. You know how Andy Reid used to be an offensive line coach, and he went straight to head coach. He skipped the offensive coordinator. So let's just jump the shark, right? So I don't have anything much else to say about the Eagles' effort. And I'm using quotes there, but that's the only thing I can attribute Brian Johnson's attractiveness to, is that he's the next in line in the fielding machine, I guess.
Yeah, apparently. So, I mean, post-mortem on the Eagles, I don't know what to say. Jalen Hurts was hurt all season, whether it was the knee, late season, it was the finger. He was beat up all year. A.J. Brown was having an amazing season. Like, he was not far behind Tyreek Hill's production for a long time. But again, as Hurts started to fall apart and Brian Johnson didn't have any game plans on how to weaponize his players, there was that. Devontae Smith, it was an up and down season when everybody was healthy. He wasn't getting the ball. Dallas Goedert, as usual, missed a few games. But realistically, I don't know that I can invest in for fantasy anymore. It's too many floor weeks. All that said, until we know what the coaching situation is next year, Jason Kelsey's retiring. We'll see what else happens to the rest of that line, but he's a big anchor on that line there. Is there anything about any of those players in terms of post-mortem that stands out for next year? Or again, is it just, let's just wait a while, see what happens, and then kind of go from there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there has to be change in the coaching ranks. I don't know if it's Johnson goes, I don't know if it's Sirianni goes. There has to be changes there. We can still be optimistic. I don't think we can necessarily. I think we can pin a lot of this on Brian Johnson.
Agreed.
It's not his fault. I mean, I don't want to say he's a first-time coordinator. I mean, so these jobs tend to have you need a breaking in period, and some of them take to it a little bit quicker than others. But just because he knew Jalen Hurts when he was 5 years old doesn't make him a good offensive coordinator. and I don't know if you knew about the relationship those two have, but they've known each other for quite some time. But anyway, very much still optimistic based on what the hires, what the coaching hires, because there will be hirings and firings on that staff.
Not much else to add there. Like the Eagles, we'll wait till the offseason. But again, we love the skill position players. We love them. A.J. Brown still should be a top 6 pick. Again, as long as there's any healthy situation there. Hurts, even though he was hurt, played very well from a fantasy football perspective. From an NFL perspective, again, the injuries took its toll. Let's get to the previews of the NFL Divisional Round playoffs. Look, we got a lot of games with bigger point spreads. We got the 2-1 seeds, either 9.5 or 10-point favorites. We've got the Lions only 6-point favorites. That kind of stunned me. And then we do have a closer game between the Bills and the Chiefs. Let's start out Packers 49ers. That was the first playoff matchup that was established. That'll be the night game on the Saturday, I believe. And so let's start with the 49ers side of the ball. First of all, look, give Joe Barry credit, I guess. Against Dallas, he was able to slow them down. I saw Dallas, even though they would run Tony Pollard, it was a one-dimensional offense. And realistically, if you could take down the middle of the field a bit on them, that offense was, in retrospect, it was very limited. Well, the 49ers aren't exactly the Cowboys. Obviously, they have Christian McCaffrey, and they have a phenomenal scheme. And the Barry defense has been weak in the middle of the field all year. But if they come in with this mindset, take the middle away, well, there's Brandon Ayuk on the outside. You could get McCaffrey to the edges. You could do anything with Deebo Samuel. So there is no recipe here. There is no recipe that this defense comes in and say, oh, yeah, we got this. The Ravens had very good success against the 49ers, but this is not the Ravens defense from a coaching standpoint, from a skill standpoint, anything. Is there anything in this game? And, oh, by the way, the 49ers had like 20 days off. They had 2 full weeks and an extra week, from the time they played that game. So that was like 20 days of rest coming into this one. Other than the possibility of a little rust offensively, which I don't really put a lot of stock into that, is there anything that the Packers could do to slow the 49ers offense down?
Well, this is about as balanced. I'm talking 49ers here. It's about as balanced, and you kind of already hinted on this. This is about as balanced of an offense as you're going to find in the league. And I don't mean just run pass balance, but I mean just what you said, inside outside balance as well. They don't play particularly fast, 60.3 plays per game, but they are highly efficient. They're 6.6 yards per play led the league.
My God.
The Green Bay's run defense has improved markedly during its 4-game win streak. And this will blow your mind if you haven't heard it already. 90 yards allowed per game during the streak, 142 before. So I don't care the competition. It's gotten better. I just don't think it matters all that much. I don't think it matters all that much when it comes to facing a Shanahan run scheme, especially when you got McCaffrey running behind Trent Williams. And I got some good stuff for you later on that.
Yeah,
especially with the Packers passing game versus the 49ers secondary working in the favor of Green Bay. I would imagine San Francisco will try to run the ball nearly 60% of the time to keep Jordan Love helping out the field.
In terms of that, is there any specific player advantage that you see? I'm just thinking it's whoever they want to get the ball to. Whatever Shanahan sees in that moment, he'll just get that player. Is there anybody you think? Obviously, McCaffrey's getting his 17 carries into 6 targets. That's a no-brainer. But is there anybody that you think he's definitely making a point, Shanahan, to get the ball to in this game?
If there's, I'll put it this way: if there's somebody that I think of the core 4, I mean McCaffrey, Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle. If there's one of those 4 that I would fade this week, it would be Ayuk. And I'll give you a little bit on why I think Debo and Kittle could have big games. It's not a big secret that the 49ers offense is highly focused on the 4 players I just mentioned. While I'm not going to bet against Ayuk, I would be very surprised if the bulk of targets don't go to Samuel and Kittle. Why? I expect a fair amount of the run fake to the left and boot to the right to Kittle, for example. As for Samuel, I would expect 2 or 3 called runs and some quick screens. Bully Bowl might be the best way to minimize Green Bay's offense right now, and I think Debo could be a big part of that.
Coach Penn brings up, I'm going to point this out. I like when people make comments. Packers catch them subbing situations like they do at Dallas. I don't know if the 49ers sub that much. They keep their stars on the field. It's very limited staff to the others. Yes, if it's a long 3rd down or whatever, they'll take out Kyle Juszczyk. They'll get out of that 21 personnel. They'll bring Jawan Jennings in. But realistically, they very rarely get in those situations. They don't have a lot of bad 3rd down situations, especially against defenses they can move the ball against. So maybe I'm wrong, Doug, help me out here. I don't think they sub that much, and I don't think it's like Dallas where you're just switching formations and packages. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that their substitution packages or anything more or less than the average team. I think what the coach might be talking about there were about 2 or 3 instances where you could see Dallas almost silly like trying to, it's 3rd and 8, Parsons, let's bring the Diggs you want. That was, I think I'm going to say he got caught up in coach got caught up in the couple 2 or 3 times that it became obvious that Dallas was trying to rush personnel on the field. Just like you said, I think the number of times that San Francisco is going to be able to get Green Bay in 3rd and long, 3rd and medium is going to minimize the number of times that those substitution penalty infractions could take place.
Coach Penn, I love the comment, though. Thank you for chiming in. It really means a lot to us. Packers side of the ball. So I've been chirping this for weeks, and especially last week, having Aaron Jones healthy. And again, no offense to A.J. Dillon. I hope he's healthy with that neck injury. I hope all is well. But if he is not available, he's not stealing 8 to 12 carries from Aaron Jones, because Aaron Jones has always needed to have a groove, because you don't see those 40-yard runs if he's getting carry here, carry there, out of the game, in and out. You don't see it. But you saw it against Dallas, and you've seen it in the last few weeks. The last 4 weeks, he has at least 120 scrimmage yards. When you feed Aaron Jones and you get him the ball, and I know the injury history is there, I get it. He's healthy right now. And if A.J. Dillon is somehow active for this game, I hope that coaching staff will say, okay, you're back, you get your 10 carries, and because they will tank themselves if they do that. That's my opinion. Now, having Aaron Jones rolling, it allows them to use play action. Matt LaFleur is very, very accomplished at scheming receivers open. But here's the rub in this game. 49ers defensively, I know defenses are often, in my mind, I always say they're often irrelevant if an offense is playing well. But I really think this is a matchup that plays well for them. That run defense has been knocked for being middling. But if you notice, since they picked up Chase Young, and they really, Eric Armstead's missed the last 5 weeks, but he might get it back. But since they have their whole collection on that line, the linebackers are freed up to do more because the offensive line has to be so nervous about those front 4 players. And so you saw the run defense get better for the 49ers. So I think this is not an easy one for Aaron Jones. Also, they have gotten solid coverage out of all 3 of their corners, out of their safeties. And the Packers have this big group of receivers who could beat you. It goes all the way down to the 2 tight ends, Kraft and Musgrave, Dontavian Wicks at receiver. Obviously, the obvious ones, we have Jaden Reed and we have Romeo Dobbs. We don't know about Christian Watson, but this is a defense that has enough defenders to be able to handle them. And the last thing before I flip to you, Doug, the pass protection for the Packers is excellent. They are very weak at center, but they can't slide protection against the 49ers against that because, again, assuming Armstead plays, they have 4 very good pass rushers. So you cannot slide protection because once you do, Nick Bosa and Chase Young are going to eat your lunch. I want to hear your thoughts on the Packers offense and how they might succeed or not succeed.
Yeah. Jordan Love, this might surprise you. Jordan Love hasn't thrown more than 33 passes during Green Bay's 4-game winning streak. Real quick,
in the games they win, you're right. Whenever they win, he throws about 30 passes, and then the games they lose, he goes about 40. But I want to add that because all season that's been the case. I'm glad you brought it up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the plan here for this one as well, at least early. I'm not sure it's a good plan because we've probably seen enough from Love by now to know that he doesn't necessarily need the run game he doesn't need the running game as a crutch to succeed. Certainly, Matt LaFleur will want to make this game as easy as possible for him, but I think he'll be tempted to use all of younger threats at receiver to test the San Francisco's corners after Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, and Ambry Thomas. They've been playing well, but we're talking about 5 receivers. We're talking about 5 receivers from Green Bay, and you're not going to find 5. And I know there are a number of times that you're going to play 5 receivers are limited, but the point being is after you get past those 3 corners, then you're starting to run into safeties and linebackers. I'll take Bo Melton and I'll take Dontavian Wicks over, CB4 or safety or safety.
No doubt.
I wouldn't expect much from Green Bay's tight ends based on mostly on the fact that the 49ers probably have the best set of linebackers in the league, Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw. So this is, I think you nailed it. It's going to be a tough one for Aaron Jones based on that front 4, based on just how good I should say the front 7, because really the front 7 for San Francisco. If Green Bay's going to have success, it's going to be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in this one. So if Bo Melton can break loose, I'm not even sure Wicks is a 3 anymore. He's probably a 2 at this point. The way Dobbs played last week, who knows? Heck, for all we know, Christian Watson might be the 4 right now. So, but there's enough talent at receiver there where you can tell yourself a story that they can go deep. They can hit a deep play here. Bo Melton could get hot, so on and so forth. Balance is going to have to be the key here, and I'm sure they're going to have to put together a few 10-plus play drives in order to score more than 20 points in this game. They certainly can. They certainly do that. But I would expect to see San Francisco's best defensive effort of the season in this one.
Yeah, there is no doubt the Packers, there's a world where they can have a lot of success on offense. They'll need things to go their way, but they have shown all year, but they have grown as an offense. Yeah. And I just cannot sing the praise of LaFleur enough on how well he schemes those receivers open. And he funneled that offense into the strengths of Jordan Love. He realized early in the season what Love didn't do well, and he's kind of minimized that in the game plans. And I think that's been part of the masterpiece of Jordan Love becoming so much better. They're not throwing those downfield passes that he struggles with as much. They take their shots with them, but it's not like early in the season where they were throwing downfield way too much. It was an inefficient way for him to attack. So give him credit. A couple comments. Angelo points out, funny that Jaden Reed didn't have receptions. Yeah, I was on Jaden Reed over to 49.5 yards. He had been the leading target getter for them. He was like involved in almost every game. Now, top of my head, Jordan Love, I think threw 21 passes in this game. Game got out of hand quickly. Dobbs wasn't covered, and I just think it was so easy to get him the ball. But you're right, that was crazy. Jade Reed didn't have anything. And then Anthony mentions that Aaron Jones has to be fed for Green Bay to have a chance. That play action will be critical. They have to be able to. So both of these comments are great, but that play action element, they really need that, because that potentially, like I said in the Dallas preview, they need that to slow the pass rush down. And in this game, it's the same principle. Anything on that before we move to the next game?
Yeah, I just had a thought here. One of the things that you'll hear, and I think I heard this from Greg Gassell in the NFL matchup show years ago, run defense is a lot about alignment and assignment, right? And that phrase stood out to me or popped in my head several times when I was watching Dallas Green Bay. Because how often, and you'll see this happen quite often in Aaron Jones games, when he's healthy, the seas just part, right? And all of a sudden, here he is, bounce, and there's a 2 or 3 yard gap for him to run through. But I don't. That's part of what makes what we do difficult to do. Is it's hard to predict when a linebacker is going to overrun his gap and open up a gap for the runner. But I'm gonna tend to believe San Francisco. I'm gonna tend to believe Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and occasionally Oren Burks. I'm gonna tend to believe that they're going to man their gap a little bit better than what Dallas did for whatever reason. What they did. So those are my thoughts on that.
Who wins the game?
Yeah. I think this is a game where I think our mutual love for Joe Barry is probably well established by now, right? I think this is a game where his conservative nature works against Green Bay in a big way. The only way we see a high volume passing attack from San Francisco in this one is if 49ers pass rush doesn't get home and Packers pass game catches fire early. As I kind of mentioned, the Cowboys gap and Taker already. I think the Cowboys' gap integrity last week was bad, which led to a lot of Aaron Jones' big runs. Arizona ran for 234 yards against the 49ers in Week 15, so I suppose they can be beat in that regard. However, the Niners gave up an average 75 rushing yards in their other 8 post-fight games, so everybody can have a one-off. I do expect Aaron Jones' run of 20-plus carries and 111-plus rushing yards over the last, I think, during the winning streak or since he's been back. Mm-hmm. I expect that to come to an end, and certainly then that would mean I expect Green Bay season to come to an end. I'm thinking I haven't done projections for this game yet, but I'm thinking something like 30-20, something in that neighborhood.
And that's right about the point spread. And I'm kind of in that same ballpark. I'm not going to recommend betting this game because I'm right about that 10-point threshold. I think if these teams play 10 times with the rest the 49ers have in San Francisco, I do think the 49ers win 8 of those 10 contests. I think the Packers do win 2. And so they obviously have a chance. They have a real puncher's chance. But I'm going to say the same. I'm right in that ballpark of the 30-20-ish range with you as well. So definitely that. Coach Penn.
Jim,
go ahead.
Yeah, Jim. And I love that you bring that up because I have done that over the last few years of looking at when I'm trying to project games and predict games, I'm looking at it from if these teams play 10 times.
Yes. Because, it's important.
Yeah. So many people think, oh, this team sucks. This team could never beat this team. No, this is the NFL. we Carolina beat Houston. Okay. It can happen. All right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, even the best and worst matchups, you can say 9-1, maybe. There's an occasional time the really bad teams will lose all 10 games, but there's there's certainly almost no locks. There's certainly almost no locks.
Correct. And I think that's important to add that to the analysis. It's not a cop-out, because we know any team can win on any Sunday. Everybody knows that. I remember years ago when the Vikings were horrible. They played the Bills, and they were like 17.5-point favorites, and Vikings had no problem beating them outright. So that's the NFL. That happens. So, again, we both like the 49ers, but we do see a path. Coach Penn loves the Jets. Jordan loves slant passes. Oh, you like how you compare to Aaron Rodgers, and Anthony thinks 28-21 feels about right. All right, let's get to the next game. Texans at the Ravens. Just like the 49ers, the Ravens come in with about 20 days off. They took their own personal bye week in week 18. They had the 6 days leading up to that, and then obviously the bye week. And so plenty rested, which is a huge advantage. Houston coming off they were 2-point underdogs, but it's still a big organizational win for them. He probably took a lot out of them, I would think, but very exciting game for their franchise. Look, in this game, let's start with the Texans side of the ball. They do not have a sustaining running game. Devin Singletary, you look at his yards per carry, they're often okay. There's a big runner too in there. Those are nice to have, and you don't shake them away. But this is not a move the chains offense on the ground. Now, the Ravens play some of the lightest fronts in the league. They are all about defending the pass. They put extra bodies in the pass coverage. They don't mind if you run on them. I don't think Devin Singletary can move the chains consistently. He might end up with numbers on the day. He might get a 25-yard run. He might get a 17-yard run, and there might be a whole lot of 1s and 2s and 3s, and that doesn't move an offense. C.J. Stroud, superstar. Not going to make any bones about it. But I wonder in this game, Doug Orth, is this where the loss of Tank Dell and Noah Brown's on the IR now? Is this a game where the loss of those two shows up? Because the Ravens can heavily focus on Nico Collins, who hit him for 80 yards in week 1, but did they really even know what they were getting? And then Dalton Schultz, who, again, you can't get to the Ravens with tight ends, but if that's how your offense is going to run. So overall, I'm a little bit concerned about the Texans' offense without Dell and Brown. I know Brown's not a superstar, but he was a big part of that. What are your thoughts on how the Texans' offense fares against the Ravens' defense?
Yeah, we were just talking about if these teams played 10 times. I think we're looking at an 8-2 situation here as well. And yes, Noah Brown, Tank Dell being gone, I think takes this from a maybe not a push, but certainly a much more competitive game to what I think it will end up being. You mentioned Singletary. I know he's had some success as the season's come to a close, but this is going to have to be a Stroud and Nico Collins game. Trio, Kyle Hamilton. I'm assuming he's going to be healthy for this one, and he has become a big part of the picture there in Baltimore. The trio, Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith, and Patrick Queen, are just too good and too athletic to let Dalton Schultz beat them. And
yes,
so I think that's pretty much out of the picture.
Because real quick, Doug, you mentioned the Dalton Schultz thing, right? When they have their full complement of weapons, defenses can't focus on Dalton Schultz. But now, if he is really their de facto number 2, Robert Woods, nobody cares. So if Schultz is your de facto number 2, you're right. They could actually put some attention on him as opposed to him just running, as I say, wide ass open. Go back to your point. I'm sorry.
No, and it's a fair point. I think the three key guys works in just about every sport. I mean, I'm going to go back to the 90s in your hometown, Chicago there. Okay, so you had Jordan and Pippen, and who got the least amount of credit, but who was not as important, but pretty vitally important to that team, Tony Kukoc, right?
And later Dennis Rodman, but yes.
And later Dennis Rodman, right? So Schultz makes a good Kukoc, but he doesn't make a good Pippen.
Yes. So, I love that. Great analogy.
And that's where I'm going with that. So John Mechie, I still think John Mechie has a ton of world potential, but John Mechie, Robert Woods, and Xavier Hutchinson all have their strengths, but none of them going to strike much fear into Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, and the Ravens assortment of corners, and they've got a handful. I think the one-ish advantage. Oh boy, here we go. What does Anthony have to say? Oh, Steve Kerr. Nice. I think the one advantage, and this is why I said it's going to be a Stroud and Collins game. Collins is 6'4". That frame is going to that frame by itself makes a big difference and gives them a bit of advantage over the Ravens corner. But Ravens corners have good size. Like Brandon Stevens, for example, 6'1". Marlon Humphrey has been defending big receivers most of his career. But as much as the whole big receiver thing gets to play in the Twitter circles or whatever, you're not going to play jump ball more than probably 5 times a game. So you're going to have to find something else besides taking advantage of the guy's catch radius. So Texans are going to need chunk plays, and as you outlined in your summation there, their Ravens are a lot about keeping things in front of them and not being beat by the pass. So it's Texans are going to have to force the chunk plays, and I don't know that that's going to happen.
It is any team more equipped to take out one weapon than them from just a coaching standpoint, and they have the bodies to do it too. Yeah. And to put extra coverage over that way, you're not going to beat us. We'll let the other guy, and that's in the realm too. CJ Stroud, look, he's overcome every hurdle. We knew he struggled against man coverage. Bobby Slowick was a genius. I'm going to give CJ Stroud all the credit in the world for beating them and making those throws he was 26th against man defense. But if you saw it, Dalton Schultz wide open on his 37-yard touchdown. He dropped one. He was wide open, well downfield on the sideline. The screen to Brevin Jordan, now the enemy touched him. Nico Collins, the touchdown they didn't have, the 60-yard, he was nobody near him on that one. So Slowick dialed up a masterpiece. Give Stroud the credit, because he made enough of those throws to cash. But this defense is going to give him a lot of funky looks post-snap. They have coached well all season, and they have all this film on CJ Stroud. Anything quick there before you get to the next one?
This will be quick. We talked briefly last week about simulated pressure, and I don't think anybody did a better job of it than Mike McDonald and Ravens defense. And I think just what you said, they're going to get a bunch of funky looks because the Ravens do probably a better job of bringing funky looking defenses than anybody.
All right, other side of the ball. The Ravens are facing a Houston defense. Last year, they were Santa Claus against the run. You could run all day. It was like 5.25 yards per carry, top of my head. Maybe I'm wrong. But this year, you can't run on them. They're less than 4 yards a carry. They're very hard to run on. Now, you throw in the dynamic element of Lamar Jackson, that mobile quarterback. It does cause, especially linebackers, to freeze a bit if there's any RPO action. So the Ravens' run game is often benefits from that element of Jackson's game. We don't know. Talking about Dalvin Cook playing, he hasn't been good. He's in my mind, he's toast. I don't know if they're going to bring him up. They said they would use him, but they got Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. I don't really think much of, but they keep him out there. But all that said, the Texans all year have struggled against play action. Now they got a big lead late against Cleveland, so play action didn't matter. But Todd Monken is going to leverage the play action in this game, I think, quite a bit. And I think that's where the advantage is. And my one little point is look for OBJ to get a big play off of play action and a defensive breakdown. I'm waiting to see that. Overall, what are your thoughts on how the Ravens offense stacks up against the Texans defense?
Yeah, I think the Ravens can run on just about any opponent. And just for the reason that you mentioned, when you have a run threat like Lamar Jackson back there, that opens up possibilities that 20 teams in the NFL don't have. Some of their ability to run on every team, just like I mentioned, Lamar Jackson. Some of it is. Oh, geez. Let me skip that part.
No, it's good.
But yeah, because I already kind of outlined what I was saying there about Lamar Jackson's run threat. But the Ravens held all but two of the teams they played this year to 24 points or fewer and scored 24 points themselves 11 times. They went 11-1 when they ran for 130 yards. Week 1 was one of those times against Houston. Week 1 against Houston was one of those times they failed to get to 130 yards. But however, Zay Flowers had 9 catches in that game on a lot of short stuff, and I have to believe that much won't change with the Texans defense line getting home as often as it does. We talk here ever so often about how often teams play zone. Houston plays zone at about an 80% clip, which is one of the higher ones in the league. But we've seen them giving up a ton of stuff to tight ends, and I don't think Mark Andrews will be active this week. I can't imagine they'll push him through quite yet. So I'm going to be investing fairly heavily on Isaiah Likely this week in DFS, for example. And just to give you an example, just give you an idea. Go ahead.
Andrews is back in practice. I think there's a good chance Mark Andrews. He said he was running great last week.
Yep.
I think I just wanted to point that out. Andrews, I projected him. I projected him not as his usual total, but I projected him as the number one tight end this week. Before you get back to Likely, I just wanted you to segue off to that and then get back to your point.
Okay, so that's a great point to make here too. Is if that ends up being the case, so then not Isaiah Likely, then I'd be investing heavily in Mark Andrews. Just to give you an idea on Houston, they gave up a league high 107 catches to the tight end position this year, and then they gave up 11 more to Cleveland on Saturday. So 118 through 18 games. So you could do the math on that, but. And Andrews is certainly as good, and I would say even after one break, Andrews is certainly on the same level of David Njoku with Joe Flacco right now. So I would expect that to be a very key and central part of the offensive attack this week.
Other than that, predict the game. Who wins?
Yeah. My thoughts here would be that, well, we talked about we talked about before. I think we talked about before San Francisco, Baltimore being the clear number ones, not only just the number one seeds, but the best teams in the field. I've kind of already laid out how I feel this is going to play out. I don't think Singletary is going to be able to do enough on the ground to get play action to work a bit more. I don't think I don't think Houston has enough weapons outside of Nico Collins to tax the Baltimore defense. Meanwhile, you have Houston's good run defense and not much else. So I haven't projected any of these games, but this one would surprise me if it's. I'm not going to go. I would say more probably in the long lines of 34-17. I think this gets to be a little bit out of hand after a while.
We can't forget it was less than a month ago that the Ravens dismantled the 49ers. The 49ers came out a little bit hot on offense. I get it, but this is an elite defense. This is an offense playing at a super high level, and we can't forget how good they are and how well coached they are. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken, defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, John Harbaugh oversees. That matters. I know they don't have a great lineage of playoff success in the recent years, but this is a hardened team, and I don't see them bonking on their home field. I do think they win this. The score you say is very plausible. You said like 34-17, very plausible. Don't know, I'd be much different. I'd probably say somewhere in the area of like 31-16, like right where you're at, in the same range. And I don't have a problem laying the points in this one. I do think the Ravens are not going to like back down or take their foot off the gas. Real quick, Anthony brings up a point. And I'm putting this up because a lot of people are thinking fantasy next year, and they're thinking, well, Andrews and Likely. And they're saying more 12 personnel of Andrews and Likely both go. No, I don't think so. Todd Monken's all about the 11 personnel. He's not changing his offense, because what you do is you're dictating box counts by putting extra receivers on the field, by having 3 receivers out frequently. What you're doing is, or sometimes they use the 2 running back looks, but that's another story for another day. But you want to get Lamar Jackson leveraged against defenses that don't have that advantage. When you're 12, you're inviting a different type of defensive structure, and I don't think it's what Todd Monken wants to do. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, 12 personnel helps you maybe protect the pass a little bit better, but it certainly limits some other things that you can do. It helps with the run game, helps protect the pass a little bit more, but it does limit the explosive plays for obvious reasons, because you don't have as much speed on the field.
All right.
The only other thing I wanted to
go ahead. Yes.
I'll just spread this real quick. For those people that are betting the spread for this one, Ravens were 6-3 at home this year, won 5 of those 6 games by 14 points, just as a heads up. But they did lose 3 at home, so they can be had. But when they get their way, they tend to widen the gap.
Yeah, no, a great call, and I love that addition to that. Let's go Chiefs-Bills. Now, the last time we saw these teams play, it was the Travis Kelce lateral to Kadarius Toney that was called offsides on Toney, and that play was probably a game winner. We don't know. I think there was some time on the clock, so who knows what would have happened late in that game. But that was the controversial ending. It was definitely offside, so we're not here to fight about that, whatever. I don't care which team won, but that was a pretty dramatic ending to a game. But my point is this. The referees have dominated the season. The talk has been about the referees in way too many games, and that's been an unfortunate mark on the season. All right, but let's get to this point here. When these teams played, the Chiefs were already running more. James Cook was the only player who had a dominant game. He did well as a runner. He had like 83 yards, I believe, as a receiver in this game. Did very, very well. And here's the thing. Kansas City has a great defensive coach in Steve Spagnuolo. But realistically, when you're playing the Bills, you have to worry about Josh Allen and his howitzer for an arm. You've got to deal with that. And so James Cook has been uniquely positioned to face defenses that cannot spend resources on him, because if you overcommit to him, Allen's going to kill you with his arm, and you can't take that chance because you don't want to die by the 50-yard play. You're willing to live with the underneath stuff a little bit. So that said, when we're talking Bills side of the football here, Spagnuolo will have some answers, but I don't think you can overcorrect on the James Cook element of the last game because, like I just said, what are you going to give up if you decide to bridge that area? You're going to sell out on something else. So overall in this game, the Bills, we mentioned earlier when we recapped their game, more balanced now. They're more balanced. They use Cook in motion too. They just do a lot of nice things with him. The tight end's been involved. Shakir, they cut his snaps for a couple of weeks. The last few weeks, they finally went back to him. So I think overall, they're going to have moderate success moving the ball against the Chiefs. Thoughts on the Bills' offense against the Chiefs' defense?
Yeah, I think part of the reason that I'm going to bring up Dalton Kincaid here. I think part of the reason Kincaid was so attractive to Buffalo this spring is because the Bills thought the ability to line up with two tight ends was key to beating Kansas City, at least a part of it. Mm-hmm. As we talked about last week, the Chiefs can be run on, and I would expect a heavy dose of Cook, maybe more than yesterday's 22 touches. This could be a Gabe Davis game if he plays, but I don't expect a lot out of Stephon Diggs yet again. Why? He's the most likely to draw the L'Jarius Sneed shadow. But it doesn't, and we talked about this at the beginning, but it doesn't seem like Buffalo has a lot of interest in stretching the field with Diggs right now anyway. So, as I said earlier, force balance seems to be what Joe Brady prefers right now. And you'll probably like this too. Since Josh Allen threw 42 times against the Chiefs in Week 14, he has attempted more than 30 passes only once. Some of that is a product of the defense playing better, but some of it is just also the product of being more conservative on offense.
So overall, what level of success do you see the Bills having offensively? A great deal says a moderate level, or are they going to have some scuffles?
Moderate with some scuffles. I think that the first meeting was 2017, wasn't it?
Yes,
correct. I would expect more success than that, but maybe only because I don't know that Kansas City's going to be able to sustain drives any more than they have over the last 2 to 3 months. So, yeah.
So the Kansas City side of the ball, I want to first point out the injuries on the Bills defense. Rasul Douglas has a knee injury. He missed this game. Christian Benford, I'm looking this up right now. He has a knee injury. He was iffy to return yesterday with a knee injury. So we know he probably is 100%. Taron Johnson left with a concussion. He's a true 50-50 shot to get cleared for the next game. Terrell Dodson, the weak side linebacker, left the game with an injury. He had a shoulder injury. He was inactive for the game, and we don't know who knows if he's playing the next one. We know both Terrell Bernard and Balin Spector left this game with injuries. They are very beat up. This is a team that patched things together after losing Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White. If half of these guys are injured, it's going to be a problem. The Chiefs, look, I'll give them this. What they finally got right is stop throwing the ball to the ancillary guys. Basically right now it's run Pacheco 20 times a game if we have to, 24 times if we have to. Throw the ball to Kelce and Rashee Rice. Everybody else, couple targets. That's it. We are putting the ball in our best players' hands. In my mind, that has allowed them down the last couple stretches of games to come out victorious because they finally had to say, Forget all this fancy, crazy, getting the ball to Valdez Scantling, Justin Watson, who still gets a couple targets. Consolidation has helped them. That said, if the Bills were at full strength defensively, I've seen this script all year. Patrick Mahomes is not playing great. But I think in the current state with the amount of injuries, I think Kansas City has a chance to move the ball better than otherwise. Thoughts are on the Chiefs offense, Bills defense?
Yeah. Well, again, we seem to be pretty much lockstep here. I think the Chiefs have shown most of the season what they are offensively and how they have to win now. Run the ball with Pacheco, move the chains with Kelsey, and hope Rashid Rice can break off a big play or two. The thing that stuck out most to me on Saturday, Rice seemed to be the only player that wasn't cold. He just it was amazing. He plucked everything out of the air, right? He ran as if he was at the combine in late February, early March, indoors. He did not seem to be at all a rookie being unaffected by cold temperatures while everybody else was frigid. That was a eye opener to me.
Man, there's no doubt. So overall, this game, the injuries of the Bills defense bother me. And I don't know as the week goes on how those progress. I really think the Bills at home do have a bit of an edge. The Chiefs have not been a good offense this year. But those injuries are going to be I don't think they could patch it anymore. Their top three corners have a chance of not playing here. That's a big issue. Their two top linebackers, they have a significant chance of not playing here. If that's the case, my pick that was the Bills will have to go to the Chiefs. I think it's a mid-scoring game. I like the last time, that 2017 range, I think that's it. If most of those injured players play, and again, you'll see the injury reports later in the week, I will give the Bills that edge, but my guess is if three of those injured players don't play, I'm giving the Chiefs that 2017 edge. It's a cop-out, it's a hedge, but it's Tuesday, and those injuries are massive. Prediction on the game.
Great stuff, Joe. Great stuff. I'll just add some, ancillary stuff here. This will be the first true road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career, as hard as that is to believe. I don't think it'll affect his play all that much, but I could see it affecting the offensive line and defense for obvious reasons, crowd noise and whatnot. With that said, I can see both teams wanting to do their best to keep the other quarterback off the field. I think it'll come down to red zone offense and defense. I don't think we've seen enough evidence to believe that Kansas City will figure it out against one of the league's better defenses. However, just like you hedged, and just like I agree, you're down to A.J. Klein as the green dot. A.J. Klein has seen his better days. I'm not sure he had great days when he was.
Definitely.
So I will hedge just like you will on this one. If Bernard comes back, Dodson comes back, and if they can get one of the linebackers and one of the corners back, I'll feel much better about predicting the Bills. Other than that, if Klein is the starting linebacker, if the Klein is the primary linebacker there for the Bills, it's going to be all day Kelsey, 10 catches, 95 yards, a touchdown. Man. I think they will pound Kelsey as often as they can.
Man, you're right.
So anyway, yeah. So I'm hedging for the same reason that you're hedging, and I wasn't going to do that prior to reading off the list of all the injuries. I knew the linebacker injuries. I wasn't aware of the defense back injuries as well. So
it's rough. It's rough. And that'd be a sad way if the Bills go out. Injuries are part of the game. I understand, and I'm not a fan of any one of the teams. But you want to see these teams at their best in the NFL playoffs, and they have legitimately 5 injuries to your 11 top defensive players. That's a bad beat. But hopefully they can get some back. All right, last game: Bucs and the Lions. So these teams played in week 6, I believe it was at Tampa, 20-6. That the Lions, no issue. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play in that game. There was that. So that said, look, this is a mismatch. The line is only 6. I don't know how this line, in my mind, I don't know how this line isn't 9. I know the Bucs just won. It was not hats off to the Bucs for winning, but there was like no great shakes as they beat the Eagles. So that said, here's the matchup in this game. The Rams were unable to attack the outside corners consistently. When they did, they had success, but they're really like more of an interior passing game. They do get outside plays, but they like the function in the middle. The Lions are pretty good in the middle. The outside, you could get them. And Godwin's no longer a slot receiver. He plays a lot on the outside. And Mike Evans clearly has been held to 70 yards or fewer in 5 of his last games. These are bracketing him more than usual. But that said, the weakness of this defense is the perimeter. Baker Mayfield, he's playing hurt. And Aiden Hutchinson, we've seen in big games, he has really elevated that pass rush. And the key on this one is if that pass rush starts getting home, because look, Rachaad White's not going to run in this game. The Lions are an outstanding run defense, and you could beat them like with the duo downhill scheme that the Rams ran and Kyron Williams got going with that. But any traditional running game, and they don't have good run blocking at all, that's not going. They're going to be in passing situations. Baker Mayfield's going to be under duress in that Detroit dome, and I think that that's going to be a real problem for him. How do you see the Bucs offense against the Lions defense?
Yeah, this summation will be shorter than some of my others here. I'll start off by saying, interestingly, Mayfield has been a much better quarterback on the road this year than at home. For what it's something like 17-3 touchdown interception ratio versus 10-6, or it's something like that. You mentioned this with Detroit's defense being one of the best run defenses in the league. Mayfield's going to have to be the reason Tampa Bay wins this game, because I don't think there's much doubt that the Lions are going to score some points. Rachaad White's impact will almost certainly have to be as a receiver. And I think the biggest advantage the Bucs will have will be Mike Evans, who got only 4 of his 10 targets in the first meeting, but he was limited by a hamstring injury that week. While I would not expect a repeat of what Puka Nacua did last week, 9, 81, 81, and 1, you remember the big play he had was an outside down the field shot, and that's what Mike Evans does well. So I would expect the Bucs to use Mike Evans in much the same way and hope for similar success. So this might be one of those times I don't believe in necessarily hot and cold receivers. I guess it depends on the situation, but I don't. Something tells me that Lions aren't going to bracket him as much as other teams.
Other side of the ball, the Lions have a good rushing attack. Not lights out, they're good. And they rotate their backs. They both Gibbs and Montgomery will get double-digit carries. That's typical in the normal workload for them. Their offensive line is quite good. The Bucs are a strong run defense. There's a point earlier in the season I thought maybe not as much, but they have really shown they're a solid run defense. I think that the Lions get something going on the ground. I don't think it's anything that's going to be like, oh, man, we've got them. We just got to pound them into submission. I don't think that's going to happen here. But here's been the weakness of the Bucs defense all year. The middle of the field in the passing game. Now, I imagine Sam Laporta was nowhere in the vicinity of 30-40% tops last week, if he was even that, and he caught, 3 for 14? He got that touchdown on a mismatch. I don't know what his effectiveness is. I do know that the Lions were very smart in being proactive against the Rams, wanting to take away the middle field, and St. Brown caught 8 of his 9 passes on the perimeter. They were smart. I think in this game, the Bucs aren't going to be able to change. You got Dean and Davis on the outside. They're not playing great, but they're still solid. I think you could get them in the middle of the field. This has got to be a Goff game. I think they get a little done on the ground, but Goff is going to have to be big in this home game. And we know there's a lot of blitzing from the Bucs, but that blitzing often doesn't get home. And I think the Lions' offensive line can handle them. So it's got to be a middle of the field game, and it's got to be a Goff game. And I do think he's able to pull it out here. Your thoughts?
I agree. Again, very good. This is bad. This is a bad matchup for Tampa Bay. I think that was illustrated in their week 6 matchup. 26. It was a 20-6 win there for Detroit. Again, as you kind of iterated already, the Lions can run against most defense, which should make Tampa Bay more susceptible to play action. Detroit's offense passing game leans heavily on in routes, and you talk about the middle of the field. Amon-Ra St. Brown does it in routes as well as any receiver in the league right now. You talk about the need for this to be a Jared Goff game. In that first meeting, 353 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a Jared Goff game back then. I don't know why it wouldn't be this week. And when you think it was, I believe I remember watching that game. I don't know that it was 20. It might have been 20-6 on the scoreboard. I don't think it's 20-6 the real game.
Right.
And that was without Gibbs.
Correct.
So that alone, Gibbs' presence should mean that they run for more than 40 yards, that's what they ran for in the first meeting. So you run for 40 yards and you still win convincingly. My biggest takeaway, we talked last week about Laporta. I didn't think he was going to play. Dr. David Giles said it was going to be essentially a small miracle if he played. He ended up playing 45 snaps. I don't know how. I guess that's what happened when you're 22, 23 years old. I don't know. I'm not there anymore.
No.
But if he can play 45 last week, I'm going to say at least 45 this week. And that's also bad news because he's going to work over the middle field as well. And we talked about the Bucs blitz that doesn't get home. Well, if you're not getting home with your blitz, leaves fewer people in coverage. And now you've got to try to tackle Laporta and Amon-Ra. And Bucs have been bad against tight ends too this year. So it's a lot of this is pointing toward, this is going to be more of a touchdown spread here.
Do you want to put a score on this one?
Bucs will score more than 6 points. Off the top of my head, I'll go 27-14.
I'm pretty close to that. I'm thinking like 31-16. I'm right in the ballpark here. I'm going to take I'm only laying 6 points in this one. So I really love the Lions minus. I would take that early. I could see this going to 7.5 soon. I could see people easily betting this one up. So I would definitely think about that one. But yes, and Aiden Hutchinson, again, it's going to be a big problem if they're playing from behind and Baker Mayfield has to be one-dimensional. This is not going to go well for him in that scenario. I think Mike Evans can get a little bit done here. I think they're going to bracket him and make the other guys beat him. But again, that pass rush is going to be a real problem. So that's how I'm looking. Any final words on the divisional round, Doug?
I don't think so, Jim. We've stretched this to an hour and 11, so I'll let our audience get back to it. But
tell everybody where they can find you and your work then.
Yeah. We talked about it at the beginning. Twitter, I'm a DOUGORTH, just like it sounds. And all my work is at FF Today. A lot of the stuff that we talked about here, you'll find on my postseason column called Road to the Super Bowl. That will come out Thursday morning or afternoon sometime. It'd probably be 2,500 to 3,000 words of pure joy and ecstasy. So please enjoy.
This show where you're watching now will be back at 11 a.m. on Friday. We'll be back the day after the games on Monday. And again, through the Super Bowl, we're Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Remember, we have that big Super Bowl week, a 2-part marathon. Monday, the day of going into Super Bowl, the Monday during the day, evening hours, and the Tuesday. More on that later. You won't want to miss that. Doug Orth brought the heat today. We appreciate him being here with us. Doug does tentatively plan on being with us next week as well to preview just the 2 conference championship games. For Doug Orth, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a fantastic day, everyone.